It is our pleasure to introduce our visiting speaker for the Special Assembly Day. He is Brother Morris, a member of the governing body. He will now speak to us on the subject, Not Fashioned After the System of Things. Brother Morris, please.
First of all, it's my privilege to bring the warm, loving greetings of the entire United States Bethel family and the rest of the governing body to you gathered here. That's right. Now, about a year ago, you remember the shooting in Blacksburg, Virginia, and Newsweek had a story, and I kept this with the morning talk in mind here for the Special Assembly Days that began in the 2008 service year. And their cover, you can't see it from there, but The Mind of a Killer. And of course there's been other shootings, as you know, since, but what I appreciated about what they did with this particular story is you can hear about 32 that were slaughtered, 15 injured there at Virginia Tech. However, on the inside they had a special report, Lost Lives. And what they did is they had a picture of each one of these individuals that died. And then they had a little profile about the person. For example, this was written here, Ryan Clark, 22 years old. It seemed everyone at Virginia Tech knew and loved the gregarious Clark, who went by the nickname Stack. When you walked across campus with him, you couldn't take 3 steps without somebody stopping him to say hello. Very popular young man, but see, no one's saying hello to him since then. So they put a face on all of these figures. Sometimes you hear these figures, so many die in Iraq or they die in Afghanistan. They just sound like figures. But when you put a face on it, you think of the family members that were affected, all of a sudden it all changes. And it's just as the Bible foretold. You're very familiar with this verse, but it behooves us to open our Bibles together and let's look at 2 Timothy chapter 3. And we'll read together just the first verse, and then we'll move over to verse 13 in the same chapter. And it highlights the deplorable conditions that the Bible foretold. Verse 1, but know this, in other words, this is a fact, that in the last days critical times, hard to deal with, will be here. So these are literally, in the original language, hard times or fierce times. So there they are, and that's a beautiful part of the United States, Virginia, there in Blacksburg. And all of a sudden, all these lives snuffed out. Of course, since then, you've had to come Illinois, more shootings there. Well, what's the reality? Some people become numb to these things, but verse 13, Jehovah's Witnesses understand, any of you that are visiting with us here and interested in being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, here's the facts, verse 13, same chapter. But wicked men and impostors will advance from bad to worse. So it's not over yet. Misleading and being misled. The fact is that what you've seen thus far, including 9/11 with the terrorist attack there in New York City, it's going to get worse. So that ought to sober us up for the theme that we're talking about here, not being fashioned after this system. Very sobering times we're living in, fierce, difficult times. Some people like to bury their head and act like it'll all go away. Well, you can't do that if you're worshiping the true God, and you can't really serve Him faithfully. And frankly, you could find yourself being fashioned after this system, which we'll talk about in a moment. Let's take a quote from the Watchtower over 20 years ago. So it's 1987, and we're quoting the encyclopedia. Now here's what the world was thinking at the time. Renowned authority, the encyclopedia at that time, still is. They stated, our disintegrating world, the menace of global anarchy. After 1945, the ideas that progress was somehow inevitable and that the future of the modern world would be one basically of cohesion and coherence were assumed. So this is what they were telling. It was going to be connected. Everything was going to be okay. Those assumptions, they went on to say, have proved to be totally misguided. What has happened instead is that the world is quietly but relentlessly being rent by a slow-motion disintegration. Now, this they're saying 20 years ago, and notice this. Many countries whose structural and spiritual cohesion was taken for granted have been breaking apart. Now, notice how they specifically identify what you've seen in the past 20 years. They've been breaking apart into tribes, clans, religious sects, city gangs, death squads, terrorist movements, guerrilla movements, and narrow and rabid self-interest groups. Ending their quote. So they said that then, and they could see it happening. Now look at it. The larger cities, they have gangs in these cities that, they're out of control. They're having to arm the city police with automatic weapons just to try to combat these individuals. You have it near here. This is not news to you. I was watching your news last night around Philadelphia, at least here at the Assembly Hall I was getting Philadelphia news. A lot of dead bodies around. It gets to the point where some folks, they're afraid to look at the news at night, aren't they? They try to wonder, well, should I watch it or shouldn't I? See, and then just yesterday, any given day, any given week, something else will be there. They're trying to find out, they're suspecting there's somebody going around drowning men. About 40 of them, a serial killer. Well, the story's just unfolding and there's similarities. So, years ago you might hear of a serial killer occasionally. Now there's so many of them, who can keep up? So the Bible foretold it. We don't want to totally stay. We didn't want you to come here to the assembly. We're not trying to depress you. You see all of these things, but the Insight book did help us capture this. It was not the time period itself that set the fashion pattern or model for people of that time, speaking of these last days, but it was the standards, practices, manners, customs, ways, outlook, styles, and other features characterizing that time period. Now that's why, because this characterizes these last days, this warning we must take to heart, and that's where we get the theme for our part this morning, Romans chapter 12. Turn your Bibles there. Now it was necessary for the early Christians, and how much more so for us now, in the last days of the entire wicked system of Satan the devil. Paul, first of all, is talking about presenting ourselves acceptably to Jehovah God. And then he states this in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And it reads, "And quit being fashioned after this system of things, but be transformed by making your mind over, that you may prove to yourselves the good and acceptable and perfect will of God." So isn't it interesting that he's saying here, quit being fashioned? First of all, the verb fashion, what does that mean? According to one dictionary, here's how it's defined. It carries the thought of giving shape or form to something. So that includes humans. Carries the thought of giving shape or form to something. So you're going to have this molding into a particular character, and it can come from influence or training. So apparently in the first century, and it's the same today, some of God's people, and this is what you have to analyze, I'm just passing this on to you, they were being fashioned after the system. Why else would he say quit? So this is what you have to listen for. You have to work out your own salvation just like I do, just as my wife does. And we're supposed to do it with fear and trembling. So I have to apply this counsel I'm sharing with you. If there's anything in the way of you're being fashioned after this system, the scriptural counsel is quit it, if we're going to be acceptable to Jehovah God. Now, what does Satan use to fashion, this master manipulator? Well, he'll do anything. He's like a street fighter. He doesn't care. See? He could care less. He'll do whatever it takes to mold you into his system and what he wants you or myself fashioned as. And what does he use? Well, you've got the political system, the commercial system, the false religious system. But here's what is predominantly used by him. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. So he has all of this organized, the commerce, religion, politics, and of course, we can't forget the entertainment. But what pushes all of this and the force, because just like an ancient potter, he'd have an open mold. They would push this clay into the mold so it takes on the characteristics that this individual potter wanted. Well, as the theme says, we're the clay, Jehovah's our potter. We'll talk about that this afternoon. But Satan is a potter too. And of course he's a wicked potter, and he wants to fashion us after his system. And this is what he uses along with his organization, as is mentioned in verse 12 of 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And it reads, "Now we receive not the spirit of the world," so there it is, "but the Spirit which is from God, that we might know the things that have been kindly given us by God." So the spirit of the world, that sinful tendency that permeates the world's thinking, and it powerfully influences the way people act. And every once in a while, you have to confess, it does influence some of God's people. How do we know? Well, I can commend you here. I've been noticing on the platform, and some of you have walked around this morning and saw some of you, you're well-dressed, well-groomed, brothers and sisters. Sometimes, see, if the world's influencing them, then they want to show cleavage, they want their skirt too short, the brothers' pants are tighter, whatever. There's all sorts of easy ways that they say, look, oh, well, that's a brother? That's puzzling. Now, are we being judgmental? Well, no. It's just that the fruitage there, it kind of puzzles me. You're a sister? You're a brother? Yeah. I couldn't have guessed. Well, then, the counsel in Romans 12:2, well, quit that. So we're going to cover 5 things today. 5 things that are different ways, and there could be others. We're just going to, a couple of them are related to each other, that are used by the devil to squeeze us into his mold. Now, let me say this. We're not trying to make anybody feel guilty. Jehovah doesn't motivate his people via guilt. I've been saying that for years. So I'm going to just pass this on to you. This is the truth. I refuse to water it down. It's what's been put in the program. It's what's to be shared. There are religious groups that you can have your way of thinking and do that. You'd have to go with them. Here we hear the truth. Here it's what the Scriptures teach. We will never water that down. Now, if that upsets someone, well, hopefully we try to put it Christ-like and kind, but if the truth stumbles a person, well, what are you going to do? Is the truth in that person? What's really molding their thinking? What's shaping them? What's fashioning them? So as I pass these things on, it may be that one of them will affect you personally. Maybe more than one. So just forget about me, if you don't mind, even though I'm a member of the governing body. I'm just a shoemaker. If the shoe fits, well, then you have to wear it. So when I go out with a group after, you know, did one of the elders tell you about me? No. We're just passing on what all of God's sheep are hearing. So if God's Spirit's working on you, then the potter's trying to shape you. That's all. He wants to shape you properly. So listen carefully, but this is between you and Jehovah God. As I mentioned earlier, you have to work out your salvation. But we love you enough to tell you the truth. That's a real friend, is it not? The ear ticklers are not to be instructing in this organization. That's another. There's groups out there. You can go get your ear tickled all day long. Not here. Because we need Jehovah to shape us. So if we stay humble and pliable, we'll appreciate it in the spirit it's given with love. So let's take the first one, Exodus chapter 23. We're just going to look at the A part here of Exodus chapter 23 in verse 2. And this is the scriptural basis for the first one. Exodus 23, verse 2, you must not follow after the crowd for evil ends. Well, what are we talking about? The first one is harmful peer pressure. Harmful peer pressure. So the crowd, the pressure, and it's going off to an evil end. Now, here's what we've said about harmful peer pressure, because there is good peer pressure, by the way. You're experiencing it now if you're listening and thinking of applying the counsel. Deceptively strong, it's a force to be reckoned with that adversely influences people, now notice, of all ages, so it's not just our young people, to conform to the thinking of a world that does not know Jehovah. Now, what's sad, though, is that some do not think that peer pressure is really a force to be reckoned with. Some of our young people, they have this idea, come on, I don't know what they're talking about. It's really not that bad. The folks I'm with at school, we do commend them, these ones I'll share their expressions with you here, for communicating. And as a parent, my wife and I raised two sons, the value of making sure you hear what your children really think and feel. We can't overemphasize that. So we love it when our young people, even if we don't like what we've heard, tell us what they really think, what they really feel. Now we've got some place to go. So you don't jump on them or jump down their throat, as the colloquial expression goes, when they tell you something you didn't want to hear. Now, because you're going to interfere with communication. Shut it down, then all of a sudden they're 18 or so and they're out the door and you wonder, well, what happened? They were just waiting their time. That's all. Because you really didn't know what they thought and felt. So when they say these things, we're not condemning them. We just want to try to help the potter and assist the potter to shape them properly. Like Pamela, a high school student. She says, I don't think I feel peer pressure. So if she was sitting in the audience right now, that's what she would have said. Well, I don't think I feel peer pressure. How about Robbie? He's a young adult. He says, I don't think peer pressure has that strong an effect on me anymore. Most of my pressure comes from myself. So we appeal to you young ones out there, you young people. Have you ever found yourself feeling the way Pamela and Robbie just express themselves? That, well, you know, I know the Bible says bad association spoils useful habits. I've been hearing that since I can remember. Since I was a baby, I've been hearing that. And you wonder, well, isn't this a little overrated? They keep talking about, they don't know these people I know in school. They're not harmful peer pressure. Well, if you're struggling with those sorts of doubts, we just appeal to you, might there be more to peer pressure than you really think? Just consider, for example, Angie, she admits that she might be doing more to fit in with society than she'd like to think. So see, this is the fashioning. Be normal like the rest of the children in school. What's wrong with that? Well, if you're being fashioned after Satan's system, a great deal's wrong with that. And it's ever so subtle. But she admits that she might be doing more to fit in. She remarks, sometimes social pressure is so powerful that you don't even know it is peer pressure. She's starting to think. See, it's so powerful, you don't even know it's peer pressure. You start believing it's your own internal pressure. But see, actually, it's harmful peer pressure. You're feeling it inside, but it's because of the crowd, what the rest of the crowd at school is doing. And if you walk away from a school that you're attending, and let's say that someone didn't know you and your parent couldn't be there to pick you up, and that was their custom, and here's somebody that's a witness, they're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but they don't know you, could they tell that you're different from the rest of those students? Or would it be like something to think about? Well, if that's the case, well, peer pressure got you. Sure did. Yeah. And frankly, some have done the double life thing. Your circuit overseer, Brother Hughes mentioned this morning, they got a different change of clothes at school. Like the governing body doesn't know that happens? Come on. And most importantly, the Holy One, Jehovah, sees all that. Now you're really in danger because you're heading down the road of hypocrisy. That gets real serious. Sometimes they never recover from a hypocritical way of life. Well, Robbie, we mentioned him earlier. He wasn't coming to grips with the peer pressure. He says his greatest pressure comes from within, but notice what he admits. So he's a little confused here. It's hard to live near a big city. Why? Because the peer pressure comes from a materialistic environment. He says wealth is such a big thing here. Well, it's peer pressure. You have to have this, you have to have that. So clearly, you do what you need to do to get right with God. If you have to quit being fashioned after this system, understand one thing: peer pressure is a very powerful force to be reckoned with. This harmful peer pressure. Okay, number 2. Let's look at 1 John, and often we read these at our assemblies, these verses. Sometimes we've heard folks tell the governing body, well, you know, we hear that verse a lot. Well, we're here to tell you, it'd be nice for us to not have to repeat certain things, but until the counsel is really taken to heart and applied, we're going to keep hearing it. Because Jehovah loves his sheep, and he warns, so that our blood becomes our own, on our own hands. The organization's been very clear, motivated by love and our concern for the sheep, because it's just imitating the God we worship. So this is a very powerful force the devil uses to fashion people. And for some, there needs to be a quitting of allowing themselves to be fashioned after this system. What does he use? Well, see if you can figure it out. And I'll read it first, and then we'll tell you what number 2 is. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. And you've heard these many times, but do we really apply them? Do not be loving either the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because everything in the world, the desire of the flesh and the desire of the eyes and the showy display of one's means of life, does not originate with the Father, but originates with the world. Furthermore, the world is passing away, and so is its desire. But he that does the will of God remains forever. Well, it's all about things. See, in the world, in its spirit, generated by Satan, the devil himself, they use people and they love things. It's the way it is. Their things mean more to them. Well, what are we warning about here surrounding these verses? Enticing advertising programs. Enticing advertising programs. Now, few would argue that television has no influence on their thinking and behavior, although there are some that would argue that. But just think about it for a moment. Use your thinking ability. Just take one photograph. Now, just this week, I was watching the news, and they had a picture from the Iraq war there, and somebody was holding up a boy about 2 years old who had been buried in rubble. And so they're holding him up like this, just one snapshot. And he's holding him up like this, and he's dead. Chalk, like, covering all of his body because he was under the debris from this explosion. So one picture, holding it like that, oh my. Now, maybe you saw it on the news, maybe not. Some of you are surprised so you didn't see it. I'm just telling you that because one photograph, and you could see it in the newspaper without comment, and would hit you. Isn't that true? One still photograph has that kind of power. Now, take that, and then let's move over to music. Whoa! Music has a powerful impact on people. It's a catalyst even for wrongdoing in many cases. So an incredible power from music. And sometimes very nice for relaxing. Certainly not condemning music. We love good, wholesome music. We're just illustrating that music is powerful. There's no denying it. It causes people to march, all sorts of things. So you take the music, and then what we're going to do is put the pictures are moving and the music are going with it. This is television and movies. And you're going to try to tell God that that advertising doesn't affect you. Come on. That's absurd. Of course it's going to affect you. The businessmen who spend millions of dollars, for example, for a Super Bowl spot for 30 seconds, you think they're stupid, business-wise? No. Why do these advertisers spend millions of dollars on advertising? Because it works. They had one I was looking at yesterday with the news, and for me, my wife could tell you, and this disturbs her probably some, I can't stand a commercial. And I'll bounce from one news show to the other to get away from those things. And then when I'm watching the nightly news, when I have an opportunity, it really aggravates me when they all go to commercial at the same time. So then I put the thing on mute. But I'm not, please, I'm not condemning anybody for watching a commercial. I hope that doesn't come through. I'm just saying, do not deny that they will affect you. And this one, they had these folks, they weren't happy with having just one of these particular vehicles. They wanted the new one. And they went and they had to make room for it. So they put the boat out in front. They're going to sell that. So maybe you saw that ad around here. You know what? That's going to put people into that showroom. Oh, yeah. Now, if it's you, forgive me. I'm not trying to pick on you. If you've been down there and got rid of a boat or something just to get another one that you really didn't need. But we've just counseled over the years, keep your life simple. If you have, then the sputtering economy right now is not going to have you too nerved up because you got your life simplified. If you didn't, well, the pressure's on. And guess who is behind it? So with this advertising, you have to ask, and anything with television, does what I watch affect my thinking in the way I want it to? For God's worshipers, that has special relevance because much of what they have on there, they can't even sell a tractor without involving a sexy woman. Now, what does that have to do with selling an item, a tractor? Certain parts of the country where farmers are buying tractors, I don't know, you don't see it around Philadelphia too much, but Pennsylvania, parts of New Jersey that are beautiful, they have some farms. See, it's Satan. And then I'm looking at the tractor, hon. I'm not noticing that. No. Romans 12:2, just quit it. We have to, and if we have to, we start immediately. So our third one, let's look at Proverbs chapter 13. Proverbs chapter 13. Very familiar verse, but and it's connected with the first one, but a little different. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20. It reads, "He that is walking with wise persons will become wise." It's not a might. That'll happen. But he that is having dealings with the stupid ones will fare badly. It's not possible. It's a reality. You will fare badly if you have dealings with the stupid ones. So, when it says stupid ones here, obviously we're talking about bad association. That's the third one, bad association. So this becomes where you have intimate association, you have a close friendship with those that don't worship the true God. And we're always kind with people that we work with or in school with that don't worship the true God. We behave like Christians. But you have to understand, if you have intimate association with them, and we're not talking about they're lacking in intelligence as being stupid. There are some very intelligent people who could get perfect scores on their SAT exam who are morally stupid. That's what the Bible's talking about. So don't get fooled by that. Good vocabulary, dress nice. How can he be bad? Look how well he dresses. Is he morally stupid? Is she morally stupid? Well, then she's not good association. He's not good association. And you can actually do this be a little expensive now, the way things are with the cost, but if you were to take a bar of silver and a bar of gold, and boy, that shot up. Recently, talking about $1,000 an ounce for gold. It was down to $300-400 not that long ago. But if you put a bar of silver and a bar of gold together and just kind of wrap them with something and let them just stay together for about 24 hours or a little more in that range, when you take them apart after a day, you will see gold in the silver bar and you will see silver in the gold bar. That's the way it is. So that just illustrates it is absolute self-deception to say that you're not going to be affected by who you choose as a friend. And I've always said for years, you show me who your friends are, your real friends, and I'll tell you who you are. Something to think about, especially if you worship the true God. Now, this fourth one, it's very sensitive. We understand that. Nonetheless, the governing body has to tell you what we see from a global picture. And what you do with the information, especially you parents, that's between you and the Almighty, and you young people to make these decisions. Let's go to Colossians chapter 2, and then you'll see which is the fourth one here. Colossians chapter 2. I hear most of the pages getting there to Colossians chapter 2. So the fourth one is higher education. Now, we've been hearing about that a lot in recent years, and we have to keep repeating it. Now, we can only admonish. You have to work this out. As we mentioned earlier, you're going to work out your own salvation. Why do we keep warning about it? Is it just the bad association? Well, the Watchtower October in 2005 did talk about that, but there's more to it, because you can get bad association on a secular job, and people will say, we know that. But this is a little different with higher education. Notice Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. The warning is very clear. Look out. Well, that's from the original language. Look out. There's a warning here. You see look out, you better pay attention. And then he goes on to write, perhaps there may be someone who will carry you off as his prey, notice, through the philosophy, an empty deception according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary things of the world, and not according to Christ. So, sometimes people will say, well, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are against education. Well, that's ridiculous. We're not against education. We are pro-education. It's just that we are selective with who does the educating. We promote divine education. We believe it to be superior because it leads to everlasting life. So, with schools of higher education, in many of their curriculums, and if you know anything about it, maybe some of you have been, do they not have Philosophy 1 and Philosophy 2? It doesn't matter what you're going to major in. And they start you off there. You'd be going for another thing, but you have Philosophy 1, you have Philosophy 2. And then all of a sudden it gets in there, and the intellectual gripping of the mind, very hard to recover from. I've seen this so many times, and we could tell you so many horror stories, and the parents are all distraught. Well, you put him there. I remember one mother, I talked to her son, he went to Harvard and we were in New England. He became an evolutionist, raised in the truth. Mom couldn't believe it, but I got him to tell me what he really thought. She was devastated. Well, you let him go there, and this real bright professor got a hold of him. Hard to believe. And sometimes some parents will drop their child off at a university, especially when they send them away from home, away from their established theocratic structure. And elders that serve there will tell you, and I've been in a lot of places where there's, they call college towns, time and again, an elder or servant in some cases too, they drop their child off, a few months, they went to a few meetings, they're gone. Parents are all upset. Why didn't you do more for my son? Why didn't you do more for my daughter? I would say, who dropped them off? The elders are heartbroken. They try. Know a lot of them personally. So you have to decide that. You want to take the risk? Your call. We're warning you. Now, number 5, it's centered around Proverbs chapter 14. Proverbs chapter 14. Very important to be cautious about this. Proverbs 14 and verse 15. Connected a little bit with the advertisement, not quite the same. Verse 15 of Proverbs 14. Anyone inexperienced puts faith in every word, but the shrewd one considers his steps. So we're talking about the mass media, newspapers, and the news programs on television too. Be very careful that you don't allow them to shape your thinking. And they will affect you. Editorials and the comments that are made and what you're reading in the paper. And it's ever so subtle. And I'll prove it to you. Maybe you've heard witnesses, they'll be telling me, our troops in Iraq, because they're United States citizens, our troops in Iraq or our soldiers, excuse me? Where'd the "our" come from? You are a citizen of the United States, but we're neutral. We're neutral. Why? Well, they were watching something or reading something and it shaped their thinking. See, we are neutral to all of that. Don't have anything to do with it. So beware of the mass media. And when they say negative things about God's organization, remember whose media it is. Why would you believe something in the newspaper that's accusing God's organization of something and believe it? That's sad. Whose media is it? Satan's media. Just because it's in the paper, and they always put the corrections a few pages in a week later or so, nobody ever sees those because they got called to the carpet for lying or giving a half-truth, which is a whole lie. So in conclusion, brothers and sisters, just look to Jehovah God to cope with all these pressures, these 5 things that we listed here. It's all there provided for us to build us up if we study, we meditate, take the counsel to heart. And a word to you parents, you've got to get your children ready for the negative influences that are coming. Take the time with them as a parent. I appeal to you. If you fail to prepare them, you're preparing them to fail. Take the time that's necessary. So in conclusion, Romans chapter 12, verse 2, that as the theme of our talk advised us to be transformed by making our mind over. So remain pliable in the hands of our potter. Then we're going to be fashioned after God's standards. Stay humble. Stay pliable. Then we'll be useful to Jehovah and his organization to his glory and praise.